Hello, it's Eamon McAuley here, and I'm back with another sports interview. I have the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing and talking to a man today that I would hold in the highest esteem possible. This man has worked tirelessly for our community this last 35-40 years through his great love of bodybuilding and weightlifting, and his name is Ronnie Whiteway. Ronnie, thanks very much for coming here today to speak to me. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem, Eamon. I'm glad to be here.
The first thing I want to ask you is talk to me about what it was like for you growing up in Ardoyne.
Well, being what they call a wartime baby, born in 1943, by the time we got up till sort of 8-9 year old, you were still living under what they call the wartime conditions, where the rationing was still on. So the food wasn't plentiful, and whatever was put on the table, that was it. And like today, young kids, 9, 10, they could mesmerise you with how they can now handle computers and so on. Whereas we were running about the street, kicking football, playing games that people have said to me afterwards, what did you call that game again? Piggy and stick, hoop and click, rally-o, things like that. All very physical games that kept you occupied and kept you fit. No such thing as computers and mobile phones in those days.
But do you remember the war? You wouldn't remember the Luftwaffe flying over and bombing Belfast?
No,
maybe your mother and father might?
Yeah, no, don't remember that. The only thing I remember was that in the street that I grew up in, Brompton Park, we did have the bomb shelters up until about, I would think about 1948 or 49 before they knocked the bomb shelters down, because we did play in them quite a bit.
Right. And tell us this, you still live in Brompton Park. Were you born and reared in Brompton Park? I know you were reared, you grew up beside my father and all, but
yeah.
Were you born?
I was born in 154 Brompton Park on the 2nd of September 1943. I still live in the same street, but I have moved quite a bit. I now live in number 152 Brompton Park, so I haven't really travelled too far.
Oh, wow.
And I've never had any reason to want to go and live anywhere else. Even through the worst days of the troubles and so on, we just persevered with it.
Was there great camaraderie and intimacy in Ardoyne in Brompton Park? You know, you had the likes of my kin, the McAuleys living 2 or 3 doors down from you, the likes of the Whalens.
Yeah.
Talk to me about
Well, the group that we ran about with at that time would have been your father, Patsy McAuley, better known as Coco McAuley.
Yeah,
then we had
Coco.
Yeah, wonderful guy. I could never hear anybody say a bad word about him. I wouldn't allow them to say a bad word about him. I grew up with him, I know what he's like.
Yeah.
Then we had Pat McKenna, Pat Larkin, Bobby Reid, Paddy McGurk. All of us all run about a guy. Shawnee Pender,
right.
Wonderful guy too, died very young, tragically, of leukemia. Right. Stevie Harvey, again, nice guy, died very young. I think Shawnee died in his early 30s, Stevie Harvey died early 40s. But as kids running about the street, the whole 8 or 9 of us, was a wonderful time.
And the Whalens, they grew up in Brompton Park too.
They grew up in Brompton Park. The difference, if you want to call it the difference with the Whalens, was that the father, Robin Whalen, a wonderful man, a real homespun entrepreneur, you know, anything that would have made money. Didn't have a full-time job, but could turn his hands to anything.
Right.
And the son sort of grew up along the same lines.
That's right.
His son Robin now, everybody knows Robin Whalen.
Yes.
Robin's help anybody.
He would.
Help anybody, and that
Great
attitude came from his father, a wonderful guy.
My uncle Harry, did you have any relationship with Harry at all?
Only in passing, when I would have called into the house to see your father, or his younger brother Harry.
Right.
Your granda Harry would have said, "Hello Ronnie, how you doing?" We all knew what his background was as Irish featherweight boxing champion.
That's right, yeah.
And your grandmother Sarah, a wonderful woman, but a woman that wouldn't have took anything of anybody.
Right. Well, that was Rinty Monaghan's sister.
That's right, Rinty Monaghan, Sarah Monaghan, to her
she'd have been world champion too.
Yeah, wonderful woman.
What primary school did you go to?
There's a little story behind that, which a lot of people that I grew up with in Ardoyne knew. A lot of people that I know now who have known me for years don't know that different from now to then was that my mother had what they call nowadays a mixed marriage. Right. My father was an English Protestant, lovely man. Wartime marriage that unfortunately didn't work out. But he insisted at the time that George and I, my brother George, my older brother George, who sadly died there a few weeks ago, that we would be sent to different schools.
Was there only the twos?
Only the two of us here. And so we were sent to the Protestant primary school up at Everton.
Wow.
And we went through the Protestant schools then.
Yes.
And then I finished up with the boys' model school.
Right.
But it was always a bit different coming home
amazing.
from the boys' model school, back into Brompton Park and playing with your friends who had just come down from St Gabriel's.
Yes.
But that, to us running about the street, didn't make any difference.
But there was no problem, there was no tension, there was never no...
None whatsoever.
Right.
None whatsoever.
Aye.
Without going into details, there were several families in the street who had similar situations to mine.
Right.
And so everybody learned to live with everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody, it was a hard time growing up. There wasn't a lot of money about.
Yes.
People couldn't afford to be standoffish or fussy or whatever.
Yes.
You just got on with life as best you could.
But great intimacy and camaraderie.
Wonderful, wonderful. You were talking earlier there about the Whelan family. Robin Whelan's wife, better known in the district as Lizzie Whelan. That woman was an unbelievable character, but a woman who, if she'd called up the our house, which she did quite regular, Lizzie wasn't one to sort of rap at the door and say, "Can I come in?" She would have just come up, pushed the door, walked in, sat down.
Yeah.
And if Marie was there, my wife Marie would have been sitting there, she'd have said, "Marie, right, in there and get a cup of tea, mate." That's how free and easy it was.
Yes, the doors were always open.
The doors were always open. There's no such thing as a
It's very
closed
sad
door.
indictment on today's society. Like they're building these big high fences now to separate for privacy, and
Yeah.
it's killing all the community spirit.
Well, it's funny you should talk about this thing about the high fences, because I'll be getting some wood delivered tomorrow to replace the fence that we have.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing that I said to Marie. The fence is staying at that height. It's
Yes.
not going up.
Yes.
I want to be able to look down the street and up the street.
Right.
And as you say, a lot of them are putting these higher fences up.
That's
And
it. And some of them are putting them up because they've had fallouts with their neighbours.
yeah, and it sends out the wrong message.
Yeah.
You know, that's the unfortunate thing.
So you went to the boys' model. That was your secondary school.
Yeah.
What did you do then when you left school? Did you have a trade? Or?
No, didn't have a skill.
Did you go to
unfortunately.
England? Like you know, even in my generation, it was like national service. You finished school and you went to London because that's where the work and that's where the money was.
Yeah.
Did you do that?
No, it didn't have to, because there was no problem getting a job as such.
Right.
You still had the spinning mills in Ardoyne and the weaving mills. They were still operating at that time.
Yes.
So I was able to get work on them.
Right.
And then I worked there until I was 18. Then I was working with plumbers, as a plumbers, what they call a plumbers get me this, get me that type of thing.
A gopher, go for this, go for that.
Go for that, or go for it, you know. But the only thing I got from that was that my brother George would have said I had a good eye in my head. I learned from watching. So I learned to the effect that when I finished with the plumbers, even though I didn't get a trade, I could still do my own bit of plumbing when I needed to.
Yes.
And then I went to work. I was never out of work. I went to work then for White's Mill down the docks, an animal feed mill.
Right.
Very hard physical work, but did no harm. Money was good.
Right.
We had a 5-man squad.
Uh-huh.
One of the men in our squad was what we would have called an old hand, Charlie, and he was coming up towards retirement age.
Yes.
So everybody gave Charlie what you call a bye ball.
Right.
And Charlie said, "I want to go for another smoke here." "That's all right, Charlie, go ahead." Nobody would. But one of the guys in our squad started to get a bit annoyed about it. So he started giving Charlie a wee bit of a hard time.
Right.
So I told him to back off. So his answer to that was to give me a real hard dig in the head.
Right.
So I picked myself up. We got back into it again. Now I was young at the time. I was
Yes.
only 20 years old. This guy was a lot older.
Right.
And I figured afterwards that he should have had more sense, because you learn the lesson that no matter who's involved in a fight or who starts a fight, if 2 men are fighting, 2 men are sacked.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
So the 2 of us were sacked.
Right.
So I just had to go and find another job.
You had a couple of run-ins with my dad, didn't you, when you were kids? Like he told me about him. My dad's great respect and admiration for you.
Your father was, I mean, I grew up with him. We
Yes.
only lived 2 doors from each